Section 3, Part 2, Introducing API Gateway. We'll first look at using RESTful APIs in Amazon API Gateway. When you create a REST API in API Gateway, you enter Advanced mode. You can manipulate the requests that come in and go out, have fine-grained control over highly customized authentication options, and can set up mock endpoints. You might find that you don't need all of those features. For example, you might only need a proxy in front of a Lambda function. You can't directly access Lambda from client applications by using a standard HTTP request because Lambda endpoints are not publicly accessible URIs. You must use either an AWS SDK for that purpose or put something in front of the function to take the request and transform it into a Lambda payload. You also need something to transform the response from Lambda on its way back to the client. If you need API Gateway only for this purpose, use the API Gateway HTTP API type. HTTP APIs are optimized to build APIs that proxy to Lambda functions or HTTP backends, making them ideal for serverless workloads. They do not currently offer API management functionality. As HTTP APIs mature, features currently available only with REST APIs will be added. Unless you need advanced features or need to monetize your API, choose the HTTP type for your APIs in API Gateway. Next, we'll discuss using WebSocket APIs in Amazon API Gateway. WebSocket-based APIs are bidirectional in nature. This means that a client can send messages to a service, and services can independently send messages to its clients. This bidirectional behavior allows for richer types of client-service interactions because services can push data to clients without a client needing to make an explicit request. Without more detail, this image looks like standard HTTP requests going back and forth between clients. But with a closer look at the requests, you find the benefit of WebSockets for this type of communication. A typical HTTP request requires much ancillary information to function. It contains headers and other bits of information, such as connection bearer tokens for authentication. The actual data, for example, "Hi there," is small compared to the extraneous data that goes back and forth for every HTTP interaction. If an application needs to send and receive a large volume of messages, it's better to set up a two-way pipe between client and server. After the initial setup, both sides can send small, efficient messages back and forth freely. It is unnecessary and costly to send header information for every interaction. WebSockets is a standard for setting up this two-way pipe, and it handles issues such as retries and broken connections. You can also set your WebSockets routing to indicate which backend services should be invoked based on characteristics such as message content. Examples of such services include Lambda, Amazon Kinesis, or an HTTP endpoint. For a secure encrypted version of WebSockets, or WS, use Secure WebSockets, or WSS. You can create and work with API Gateway APIs by using the AWS Management Console, the AWS Command Line Interface called the AWS CLI, Swagger, and OpenAPI to document and share your API definitions. AWS provides several deployment frameworks that can be used to write infrastructure as code and deploy your APIs in the cloud. The AWS Serverless Application Model, known as AWS SAM, and the AWS SAM CLI are particularly useful for locally testing and deploying APIs as part of a serverless application. AWS SAM is a superset of AWS CloudFormation, but provides a simplified syntax for common serverless components. You can use CloudFormation to write infrastructure as code that uses a common language. It supports YAML and JSON templates. CloudFormation automates the provisioning and ongoing updates of resources. The AWS Cloud Development Kit, or AWS CDK, uses the familiarity and expressive power of programming languages to model your applications. It provides a library of constructs that covers many AWS services and features. The AWS CDK provisions resources with CloudFormation. Here are the key takeaways from this section of the module. Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed service that provides API proxy and simplifies API development. API Gateway supports RESTful and WebSocket APIs. API Gateway integration with AWS services frees developers from writing integration code. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.